So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Another solved true crime case from County Durham in England. I'm so sorry if you're from there, I don't mean to scare you. I didn't intend to do 2 cases in the space of 5 videos from County Durham, specifically from Darlington. I'm so sorry. That's just how it's worked out and I don't quite know how. Today we're going to be talking about a killer nicknamed the Facebook Killer. But before we get into it, I just want to thank Function of Beauty for sponsoring this video. If you've heard me talk about Function of Beauty before, you will know that they are the beginning and the end of my hair care routine. I don't use any other products from any other companies. I just love Function of Beauty. Everything I need for my hair is pretty much in these 2 bottles, the shampoo and conditioner. Function of Beauty formulate every shampoo and conditioner to suit your personal hair type and your hair goals. All you have to do is go on the website and you fill out a really quick quiz about your personal hair, how you want to improve it, and Function of Beauty will make the perfect formula for you. The main hair goals that I personally go for are like the strengthening ones, hydration, deep condition. You can customize other stuff too, like the colours of the shampoo and conditioner. You can also customize the scent and also the strength of that scent. They also come with pumps, by the way, which are optional. I haven't put mine in yet because these are my new bottles. But as well as shampoos and conditioners, Function of Beauty also do a lot of hair care products. I love the leave-in conditioner, and recently I've been loving the hair serum. And it looks like I've barely used any of this because you only need a tiny amount every time, and I've been putting it in like the ends of my hair and it makes it so soft. Function of Beauty are 100% vegan, 100% cruelty-free. They have no toxins, no parabens, no sulfates, and no GMOs. And they were kind enough to offer you guys 20% off of your first purchase when you go through my link, which is in the description. So if you want to treat yourself to some new hair care in quarantine, then I got you. On with the case. Before I do, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes, and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So like I said, today we are going to be talking about the Facebook Killer and the heartbreaking murder of Ashley Hall. Ashley Hall was a 17-year-old girl, the oldest of 4 sisters, living with her mum and siblings in Darlington. Because Ashley was the oldest of 4 siblings, and I believe her mother was a single mother, don't quote me on that, Ashley helped out a lot around the house. She helped look after her siblings, she helped do the housework. Her mother, Andrea, described Ashley as her rock because she was just always there for her, always there to help her. She was way more than just a daughter to her. She was like a best friend. Ashley was enrolled in a childcare course at Darlington College, and she was hoping to one day become like a nursery nurse or work in like a daycare or a playgroup or something. Ashley was a huge animal lover. She had pets all the way through her life. She mainly had like goldfish and hamsters, but she just loved all animals. Growing up, she was a member of the Brownies and a member of the Guides, but by the age of 17 in 2009, everything was kind of moving online. Everyone was on MySpace and Facebook. It was all social media and texting. And Ashley was a very nice, normal teenage girl. She had a big group of friends. She was always talking about boys. She was always online on social media, texting her friends until early hours of the morning. Like pretty much every other girl her age, she was absolutely stuck to her mobile phone. All the kind of spare pocket money that she would have would go on extra credit for a mobile phone so that she could text her friends more. In particular, Ashley especially liked Facebook, and she would be on there for hours every day, liking posts, writing statuses, posting pictures. And then one day in October of 2009, Ashley was just on Facebook, as she often was, when she received a friend request from an attractive-looking young man named Peter Cartwright. After taking a look at this boy's profile and through his pictures and stuff, Ashley was attracted to him. He was 17 years old, he was her age, and he wasn't wearing a shirt in his profile picture, which I imagine to a 17-year-old girl in 2009, that probably was attractive. The 2 of them didn't have any mutual friends, and I don't know if Ashley realised that at the time. However, she accepted his request anyway, and the 2 of them were friends on Facebook. But it wasn't like his account was suspicious or anything. He had upwards of 3,000 friends. There were posts on his wall. There was plenty of pictures. Like, It just seemed as though this wasn't someone she knew. And not long after accepting that friend request, Ashley received a message in her inbox. It was Peter Cartwright saying hi, and so Ashley responded. The conversation began to flow between the two of them. They were putting X's on the end of their text messages, and there was getting more and more X's, like every message. And if you're not from the UK, you probably won't know what that means, and this is about to sound really weird. But basically, over here, when you put an X on the end of a text message, it's like a kiss. And the more you put, the better it is. And depending on the context, it can either be flirty or just like a sign of affection. You can put them to your parents, or you could put them to your boyfriend, and it would mean completely different things. Or at least it did in 2009, and when you're 17. Like, when you're younger, and especially like back in the day, there was a lot more like emphasis on that, but like these days it don't really mean much. Ashley and Peter were messaging for a few days on Facebook, and she told all her friends in college, and she showed them all these pictures. She was really excited, and they were really happy for her too, because Ashley didn't really speak to boys. Boys weren't really interested in Ashley, and she had quite low self-esteem when it came to boys and relationships. She'd never had a boyfriend before. She never really had any kind of experience with boys, and so there was this attractive young man online that took an interest in her first, and so she was really excited. Ashley and Peter spoke every single night, and they kind of switched, I think, from Facebook to MSN Messenger, where Ashley nicknamed herself Playgirl. They told each other about their hobbies, their interests, what they like, what they don't like, and Ashley learned that Peter was a DJ that went by the name DJ Pete. And Peter was full of compliments towards Ashley. He was constantly flattering her, telling her how attractive she was, and Ashley liked this kind of attention. She'd never received this kind of attention from a boy before. And just a few days into them talking, Peter asked Ashley if she would be willing to meet up with him, and she said yes, and a plan was made and everything. However, Peter bailed at the last minute. I couldn't find why he bailed at the last minute. I don't know if he had a legitimate excuse or whether he just didn't show up. But he did give some sort of excuse to Ashley. He apologised and he asked for a second chance, and Ashley liked this boy, so she just accepted it, and they decided to plan a new meetup date, and that was going to be October 25th of 2009. Peter asked Ashley if she wanted to spend the night at his house that night, and he said that his dad would take her home the next morning. Everything was sorted, and so she accepted. In the week leading up to the 25th of October, Ashley and her friends were so excited at college. It was pretty much all they were talking about. They were so excited for her to go and spend the night at this boy's house, On the morning of the meetup, Peter texts Ashley and he says, "Is it alright if my dad comes and picks you up from your house and brings you here?" Because Peter didn't drive yet. And so Ashley said, yeah, that's fine. Ashley spent the whole day getting ready and packing her overnight bag, and her family recall her being in a really, really good mood. She was messaging all her friends on MSN all day, and of course messaging Peter all day. Around 7:30 p.m. that night, Ashley runs downstairs to her mother Andrea, and she asks if she can sleep over at a friend's house that night. And even though it was a Sunday, it was the October half-term break, and so she didn't have school on Monday. So Andrea said, yeah, of course, why not? Just as long as she was home by lunchtime the next day. And Ashley said, yep, that's fine, and she ran back upstairs to go and finish packing her bag. Around that same time, Ashley received a text from Peter's father that said, "Hi, hun, it's Pete's dad. Are you sure you don't mind me picking you up? Pete is really looking forward to seeing you, and yes, it's okay for you to stay." So then Ashley replied to Peter's dad's text saying, "No, it's fine. I don't mind. I trust him, so I trust you. And thank you." And not long after that exchange, Ashley receives another text from Peter saying, "My dad's on his way, babe. He says excuse the state of him, lol. He doesn't have to come in and meet your mum, does he, lol? He'll be a mess, probably, lol. Oh, and are you wearing some sexy underwear for me? Hee hee." Ashley responded saying, "Okay, babe," and "No, he doesn't, lol, and it's okay, haha. What car has he got? And you will have to wait and see, won't you?" with a winky face. That night, Ashley Hall sat at her window and waited excitedly for Peter's father to pull up outside her house. And when he did, she texted Peter saying, "He's here, babe." Ashley ran downstairs to the front door, and just before she left, she shouted back up to her mother, who was putting her sisters to sleep, and she just said goodbye. Her mother said goodbye back, and that was it. She went outside to meet Peter's father in his dark blue Ford Mondeo. She got inside the car, and off they went to Peter's house. But that was the last that anyone ever saw of Ashley Hall. The next day, around lunchtime, Andrea was expecting her daughter home because that was the time that she'd given her, and Ashley was very well behaved. She never stayed out later than she was allowed. However, she wasn't as punctual as she normally was. Andrea gave her the benefit of the doubt, thinking, well, maybe she's just still at the friend's house, maybe she's lost track of time, maybe she's having too much fun, and after all, this was her 17-year-old daughter. She didn't want to be too naggy and on her back, so she was like, okay, I'll just let her do a thing, she'll be home soon. But the time was getting later and later, and Ashley hadn't even texted to say that she was going to be home late, so Andrea was panicking a little bit at this point. She was texting and calling Ashley, but Ashley wasn't picking up the phone, she wasn't responding, and so Andrea got in touch with a few of Ashley's friends and just said, look, do you know where she is? Like, have you heard from her? And all of them said they hadn't heard from her. However, they do know that she was going to meet a boy the night before. So, of course, Andrea's panicking even more at this point, thinking, who's this boy? Ashley's never mentioned a boy before. And so she went on Ashley's Facebook page to see if she could find anything. And that was when she came across Peter Cartwright's Facebook page. She had a look down it, and Peter and Ashley had never interacted on Facebook. Like, they'd never posted on each other's walls, never tagged each other in anything. But of course, that's not to say that they hadn't been communicating privately. All Andrea could really do at this point was keep calling Ashley's phone and just hope that she was late. Just hope that she'd got caught up and she'd forgotten the time and she'd forgotten that she had to be home and that she'd walk through the door any minute. It was a hard one because she was a 17-year-old girl. She was almost an adult. She was 1 year off being 18, and you want to give your child some level of freedom and not be such a nagging parent when they're that age. And Ashley had never given her mother a reason not to trust her either. She was a very trustworthy girl. She was very well behaved. She was good at communicating with her mother when she was going to be late and stuff. Andrea just kept calling, and finally, on the 30th call to Ashley's phone, someone picked it up. But it wasn't Ashley. It was a police officer that picked up Ashley's phone, and when they asked who was calling and Andrea said it was Ashley's mother, they said, well, I'm really sorry to inform you that we've just found your daughter's body. She's been murdered. Ashley Hall had been murdered within an hour of being picked up from her house the night before. Her body was found fully clothed, laying in a farmer's field behind a hedge. The location of her body in this farmer's field was just off a lay-by that was just coming off of a motorway, very close to Sedgefield Services in Durham. Ashley had been raped in more than one way, and her cause of death was found to be suffocation. Her body was found almost 2 full days after leaving the house with Peter's father. But as I'm sure you've figured out by now, not everything was as it seemed with that meeting. Police found out about this murder in very odd circumstances. They didn't find the body first and then work back from there. They didn't find out that Ashley was missing and then try to find her. They actually found out about this because her killer confessed. They had no idea that anyone was even murdered or missing. Even Andrea, her mother, hadn't reported this to police yet. So you can imagine the surprise from the police officers when someone comes into the police station and says, I've killed someone. On the morning of Tuesday, October 27th, a man was arrested on minor traffic offences. He'd been wanted for this offence for a long time, but it was just a case of police finding him. And finally that morning he was found. His registration plate was picked up and police went to his location and arrested him. And then they took him back to the police station until they kind of figured out punishment and stuff like that, and he was put into a holding cell for the time being. But while he was just sat in police custody, he was just sat in his cell, he decided to call a police officer to his cell and tell them, I've killed somebody last night, I need to talk to someone from CID. CID being the Criminal Investigation Department. So this officer was rightly shocked when this man comes out with that. He thought that this man was only wanted for a few traffic offences, nothing like this. And so the officer says to him, okay, don't say any more, we're going to take you to the front desk where there's cameras, audio recording, there's a woman with a computer. If you're going to confess to something like this, it needs to be recorded.
Right, come stand here, please.
Right, do you remember what you said to me in the cell?
I killed somebody last night. I need to tell somebody from CID where the body is.
This is what I've written. I went to speak to a new from CID as I killed someone last night.
Yeah.
Do you agree that's true? What did you say?
That's true, yeah.
What was the last bit you said there about you need to tell them where the body is?
Because it hasn't been reported yet.
The man in that video that just confessed to the murder of Ashley Hall was 32-year-old Peter Chapman, a homeless drifter from the north of England. In his longer confession, of course that wasn't his only confession, they just had to get his immediate one recorded. He had another proper one later on in a proper interview room, everything was done properly, and in that he confessed that he had been grooming Ashley Hall online for the past week under a fake Facebook account named Peter Cartwright. This was the person that had been flirting with Ashley all week. This 17-year-old attractive DJ Peter Cartwright that Ashley was so excited to meet was a 32-year-old man. Ashley wasn't the first girl that Peter Cartwright had groomed and coerced into meeting. However, we'll talk about those a little bit later on. And I say those, there is multiple cases. But I'll just tell you about this one for context right now. So a couple of weeks before he tried to meet up with Ashley, he tried to meet up with a different 15-year-old girl. Again, he'd been grooming this girl online for quite a while under the name Peter Cartwright, all the same pictures, everything, and they agreed that they were going to meet in a B&Q car park. And so this 15-year-old girl gets to the car park, and when she realises that the man in the car that Peter Cartwright had described was his car was not a 17-year-old boy and was in fact a bald 32-year-old man with glasses, she ran away. And after this, Peter Cartwright's confidence was knocked. He knew that it was going to be so hard to actually get a young girl to come and talk to him and properly meet up with him, because as soon as they realised that he wasn't the boy in the Facebook profile, they were going to flee. So he needed a new plan for the next girl that he was going to try and groom, and that next girl ended up being Ashley. He needed a way to get her into a car with a middle-aged man that she didn't know willingly without scaring her away. And that was when he had the idea to pretend to be Peter Cartwright's father. And he actually put a lot of thought into this. He bought a second phone so that he could text her off 2 different phones. I don't know why he didn't just buy a second SIM card, but anyway. And that was quite a big deal actually, because this man, like I said, was homeless. He was unemployed. He didn't have a job. So for him to buy a whole second phone with a whole second SIM card in it, to go along with this. But of course it worked, and Ashley got willingly into this man's car without having a clue who he was. And not much is known about the actual car journey, because no one knows how long they were in the car for, what was said in that car ride. But we do know how that car journey ended, with Chapman driving the two of them off of that lay-by, off the motorway, and down into that field, where he then assaulted, raped, and murdered her. Once they got to that lay-by, he forced her to get out of the car. He then taped up her hands and her feet and then forced her to perform oral sex on him. After that, he put tape over her mouth to gag her and then removed her lower clothing and raped her. Afterwards, he cut the tape from her wrists so that her hands were free, and he told her to pull up her own clothing, and then once again he tied her wrists. Finally, he grabbed the rest of the tape that was on the roll and wrapped it around her head multiple times, around her mouth and around her nose, until she couldn't get any air and she suffocated. He then, I believe, tried to cut all of the tape from Ashley. I don't think her body was found with any tape on. He put all the tape in his car and then moved Ashley's body kind of more underneath a hedge, kind of out of the way, so it wasn't as obvious, and then he drove away. And he continued driving all night. And then, of course, the next morning, his car registration is pulled up. He's caught by police, he's arrested, taken to the police station, and that was when he decided to confess. And it was lucky that police caught him that morning when they did, because Chapman was actually on his way to Middlesbrough to meet another teenage girl that day. Who knows how that one would have ended? It could have ended the exact same way as this. Police searched Peter Chapman's car and it was very clear that he hadn't even tried to dispose of any of the evidence. There was still Ashley's mobile phone in there, her overnight bag of all her clothes that she'd packed to stay at this boy's house. That was all still in there. The car was full of rubbish. There was fast food wrappers everywhere, and in and amongst all of that, there was a bunch of tape with Ashley's hair still in it. There was the cardboard end of a duct tape roll, so he'd used a full roll. And there was a used condom, I believe, in a CD player. I don't really understand that. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if he tried to hide the used condom at all, but why would he try to hide that and nothing else? That's just what I read, that it was found in like a CD compartment. Of course, because police still hadn't found the body of Ashley Hall, they decided to take Peter Chapman out with them so that he could direct them there, and within 48 hours of the murder, Ashley's body was found. While the investigation was going on at the crime scene, Peter had been taken back to the police station and he was getting all of his interviews, all of his questionings. And while he was in his confession, Peter said, "I had to tell you today. I couldn't just leave her there like that. Has anyone been in touch with her family?" Some sources say that Chapman said in his confession that he'd killed Ashley during an argument because she reminded him of his ex-girlfriend, and she was saying a lot of similar things that his ex-girlfriend said, and this just made him mad. It kind of took him back to the anger that he felt in his relationship, and it sparked this kind of murderous rage in him, and so he killed Ashley. I couldn't find what the argument was about. I don't 100% know if that's true because I only read this argument theory on a couple of sources. So, police learned that Peter Chapman was homeless. Now, he wasn't sleeping on the streets. He would sleep in his car a lot of nights. However, some nights he would treat himself to a stay in the Metro Inn Hotel on an industrial estate in Stockton. And when he was sleeping in his car, he liked to travel around. He would drive a lot, so he would be in like Liverpool, Merseyside. He would go to Durham, Darlington specifically, because that was where he was born. Even though he was born in Darlington, he was raised in Stockton-on-Tees by his grandparents. I don't know where his parents were. I don't know if anything happened to them. I don't know if, they were still in the picture at all. In school, his classmates recall him being quite a loner. He was very weird. He was the type of person that would just kind of say and do unwelcome things. One of those people that'll just butt in your conversation to say something really weird. Police first heard of Peter Cartwright when he was 15 years old. That was his first experience with the police, when he was accused of sexual assault, although this case was eventually dropped. And then 4 years later, when he was 19, another girl came to the police and said that Peter Chapman had raped her. This girl had been friends with Chapman for a while. He'd gained her trust and everything, and then one day he just kind of snapped and did this to her. But again, the case was dropped. And when I say the cases were dropped, I don't actually know the circumstances behind that, so I don't want to put blame on anyone. I don't know whether the girls dropped the charges or whether police decided there wasn't enough evidence, so the case was dropped. I have no idea. In that same year, when Peter Chapman was 19 years old, he was given his first ever prison sentence for the rape of 2 sex workers. Both times, he kidnapped these women, taped them up, put a knife to their throat and raped them, saying that if they tried to get away or if they tried to push him off, he was going to slit their throat. And when he finished both attacks, he robbed both women. And this was 2 separate things that happened 2 days apart, 2 completely different women. The second of those attacks was on a 24-year-old woman, and when they were in the car, when he'd kidnapped her, they were driving around for 20 miles. This woman remembers thinking that she was going to die that day. And this whole time that they were driving, he was tormenting her. He was telling her the story of exactly what he'd done to another sex worker 2 days prior. He was saying he was going to do all the same things to her, get a knife out, rape her, rob her. And on top of this, these attacks were also committed in a stolen car, which only added more time to his prison sentence. And unbelievably, this is going to infuriate a lot of people, he actually only served half of a 7-year sentence for both of those attacks. He only served about 3.5-4 years. Peter Chapman was released from prison in 2001 and he was put on the sex offenders register. However, police were not very effective in their monitoring of the sex offenders register and especially of Peter Chapman. He might as well not have been on the thing because he ended up flying under police's radar so much in the next kind of 8 years before Ashley Hall's murder. They were pretty much never checking on him. In 2002, when Peter Chapman was 27 years old, he moved to Liverpool to live with his new girlfriend and her young son. Although when this woman found out that Chapman was on the sex offenders register, she freaked out, she broke up with him, she kicked him out of a house and said, "Don't ever come back here." And that was when he began having financial troubles, he began living out of his car, he didn't have anywhere to go, he didn't have any money. He committed a lot of like robbery and theft crimes to support himself, to give himself money for food and money for petrol and stuff like that. In 2002, Peter Chapman was arrested once again on suspicion of the knife-point rape and robbery of a sex worker in Cheshire. And again, just a year later, in 2003, he was arrested for the exact same thing of a teenage sex worker. However, both of those cases were dropped as well. Again, I don't know the circumstances. I don't know if police are just being incredibly slack with their prosecution of this man or whether all these women are just dropping charges. I think the first situation seems a lot more believable. Just to kind of butt in here, if police had just done their jobs properly and properly prosecuted this man and even just kept a better track of this man, monitored him because he was on the sex offenders register, but for some reason he just wasn't being monitored, then I can't even imagine how many of these crimes could have been prevented had they just checked on him. In 2004, Peter Chapman served 1.5 years in prison for not complying with the rules of the sex offenders register. Maybe if the rules were enforced a bit more and maybe if he actually got jail time for his crimes, then maybe he might comply with the rules. I just can't believe that they gave him 1.5 years in prison for not following the rules rather than giving him a decade in prison for raping a woman. Or longer. I can't believe that 1.5 years was the punishment that they saw suitable, rather than actually punishing him for the actual attacks that he did. They rather punished him for breaking the rules. Obviously, because Peter Chapman was homeless and he moved about a lot, one of the rules of the sex offenders register is that you've got to inform police every time you change locations, every time you move somewhere new. And Peter Chapman didn't. In the time that he kind of slipped under the radar, Peter Chapman was able to enroll in a computer course at a school. A sex offender was allowed to enroll in a course that was being held in a school. Around this same time, Chapman managed to find himself a new girlfriend. And I think the two of them moved into a new house and everything. But that didn't last long because after an argument with one of the neighbours one day, the neighbour's house suddenly set on fire. It seems very coincidental. I don't think Peter Chapman has ever been charged with arson in relation to this neighbour's house setting on fire, but he was wanted for that for a long, long time, and he went on the run and everything. In early 2009, so the same year as Ashley Hall's murder, Peter Chapman was involved in a hit and run. And as soon as that happened, he fled hundreds of miles away and police were, of course, unable to find him because he was homeless. He didn't have a permanent address. So from all of this, all of his past, it's very, very clear that Peter Chapman seems to have a hatred towards women. And he thinks that he can do whatever he wants with women. He wants to torture them. He wants to punish them. He wants what he wants from women. On the fake Facebook page, Peter Cartwright Facebook page that Chapman made, like I said earlier in the video, it had 3,000 friends on it. But what I didn't mention at the time was that all 3,000 of those friends were all female. And their ages were mainly 13 to like 16, 17. There were only a few of them that were like older teenagers and into their 20s. And over 100 of those 3,000 Facebook friends were added on the exact same day that Peter Chapman first messaged Ashley Hall. Peter Chapman had fake profiles on many different social networks. There was Facebook and MSN, like I said, but then there was also this thing called tagged.com, a bunch of other social medias, and his username, his nickname on most of these sites was DJ Pete 0606. On a search of Peter Chapman's laptop, which was stolen, by the way, I told you he stole a lot of things and sold them on and robbed people just to get enough money to live. On this laptop, police found a whole collection of indecent images of women and girls, like children. And he'd gotten most of these pictures through his fake Facebook account. He would get in touch with these women, he would flirt with them, just like he did with Ashley, and he would, gain their trust and then ask for these pictures. And bear in mind, many of these women thought that their pictures were safe with this man. Well, with this boy. They thought they were talking to 17-year-old DJ Pete. During the search of this laptop, police found so many more conversations with so many more girls, mainly in the northeast of England, like Durham kind of area, Middlesbrough area. And Peter Chapman was planning and asking to meet up with all these girls in the days following Ashley's murder. He was planning other meetings. As I said earlier in the video, there was that 15-year-old that he tried to meet in a B&Q car park just a couple of weeks before Ashley's murder. Thank God she ran away. There was another teenage girl that he tried to meet up with in Middlesbrough just before the other one, and for some reason that one hadn't gone ahead either. It's absolutely devastating what happened to Ashley Hall, and that should have never happened. In my opinion, police had the power to prevent that, had they done their jobs properly. And the fact that so many more attacks could have happened in the days prior or in the days following Ashley Hall's attack, had he not confessed or had those girls not come up with an excuse or ran away, it's just terrifying to think about that this man could have ended up a serial killer. Ashley Hall's funeral was attended by hundreds of people. All her school friends, all her teachers. It was clear that Ashley had touched so many people's lives in her very short 17 years. Peter Chapman, in all of his court appearances before the main trial, he was pleading not guilty, which I don't understand. You confess to a murder and then you plead not guilty. I don't get it. But he was saying that he was going to plead not guilty in the main trial. But then on March 8th of 2010, almost 6 months after the murder, Peter Chapman stood up in court and pled guilty to the rape and murder and kidnap of Ashley Hall. Peter Chapman was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years, with the judge saying that this had been an evil scheme, very carefully brought and with considerable detail to trap your victim. And the judge even called Chapman a very great danger to young women. Chapman is currently serving time in a very high security Category A prison in County Durham, which is the same place that he committed this murder. In prison, Chapman has written letters to an old friend complaining about how boring life is in prison. He's complaining that there's no PlayStations. He's complaining that he can only get a few channels on the TV and he's so bored of everything that's on the TV. In these letters is also when he confessed that he killed Ashley because she reminded him of an ex-girlfriend. I don't know which ex-girlfriend it was, but he despised the woman and he had a lot of resentment towards her. And when he met Ashley, her personality seemed to be very similar to his ex-girlfriend's, and everything that Ashley would say, Peter Chapman said it would just wind him up, it would just infuriate him. He said that he put the tape over her mouth just to shut her up, and that he didn't intend to kill her, and now there's nothing that he can do to change it. It's absolutely ridiculous. A 17-year-old girl that has nothing to do with your ex-girlfriend was annoying you that much in the 20 minutes that you had her in the car, that you put tape over her mouth to shut her up, and then you accidentally kill her. I just find that absolutely insane, and I'm not going to spend any more time on that because it's stupid. In these letters, he also states that he wished he'd just joined the army when he left school so that maybe either now he would have a completely different life or he would be dead. He expressed an idea to his friend in these letters that he thinks that all prisoners just like him that committed really bad offences should go to Afghanistan and be the ones to defuse the bombs. So they would either be put to good work or they would be killed by the bombs. And he sees that as, you know, punishment that fits him. And Ashley's mother, Andrea, said that she would be perfectly happy for him to do that. She said that he should have been hung anyway for what he did to her daughter. Police have since admitted that there were a lot of places in this case where they fell short, and they could have done more to protect not only Ashley, but every other female that this man ever contacted. They could have saved Ashley's life. Police have put this down to inadequate resources, so they didn't have enough officers and they just didn't have enough funding. And unbelievably, okay, so I don't know if this is completely true because I only saw it in one source, so take this with a pinch of salt, but I found that the PC that was in charge of Peter Chapman, the one that was in charge of like monitoring him, keeping an eye on him and whatever, because he had committed several sexual assaults and rapes, this police constable actually hadn't received proper training in monitoring sex offenders. He hadn't received the training. So why was he doing the job? Because he certainly couldn't do it properly if this was the outcome. In the aftermath of Ashley's murder, Facebook themselves even put out a statement saying that they were deeply saddened. They put out a set of guidelines on how to stay safe online, and they urged under 18s to never meet anyone from the internet in real life. Ashley's friends and her college, Darlington College, actually did a lot in the aftermath of her murder to prevent other young people ever meeting her same fate. They created a list named Ashley's Rules, and this was just a list of ways to stay safe online, and this was handed out to every child in Darlington that year. And some of these rules include things like, if you're ever meeting up with someone who is alien to you or your friends, make sure that you meet them in a group of at least 2 or 3 in public and in a well-lit, populated area. Other things on this list include never tell a stranger on network sites or chat rooms anything personal about yourself, such as where you live or your date of birth. Ashley's mother, Andrea, actually attempted to sue all of the police departments that kind of had a hand in allowing Peter Chapman to slip under the radar. So the police departments in places like Merseyside, Durham, etc. But all of these kind of lawsuits were unsuccessful. Andrea was just trying to get some closure and some compensation, saying that losing her daughter in such a tragic way had had such a toll on her mental health, and the whole time police could have prevented it, so she was trying to get some compensation for that. However, she was turned down compensation because she wasn't there when her daughter was murdered, and she wasn't there in the immediate aftermath, so they didn't have to pay her anything. I cannot believe how backwards that logic is. Just because she didn't watch her daughter die, and just because she didn't see her dead body in that field, doesn't mean that she didn't still lose her, and that she didn't still hear all the details of the things that happened to her 17-year-old daughter. She's still going through all that pain, she just didn't see it visually. Just because Andrea didn't see it with her own 2 eyes doesn't mean that she wasn't still scarred by something that police could have prevented. But yeah, that completes this case. A very, very scary one. Just the thought that the police had so much knowledge of this man being a danger to women and they just did nothing about it is terrifying. And this is a big part of why I make these videos as well, is because I know a lot of my audience are younger girls, like teenage girls, and things like this are very real. Things like this happen all the time. And I feel like when I've got such a big platform, it's very important for me to be doing cases like these. So if you know of any in a similar vein, please put them down below in the comments. Things like this aren't horror stories. This is true crime. Things like this are happening all the time. If you want to see some more like this, please subscribe down below, because I have a lot more videos planned and my upload schedule is looking really good right now. Thanks again to Function of Beauty for sponsoring this video. Remember, if you want to get 20% off of your first order, then just go through the link in my description. Thank you so much to all of my channel members in tiers 1 and 2 for their continued support with the channel, and to my tier 2 members for their help in deciding the cases that I cover. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!